transatlantic alliance is on the verge of collapse. Donald Trump has just released a statement so explosive, so unprecedented, that it's sending shockwaves through every corridor of power from Washington to Westminster. The President of the United States has done something no American leader has dared to do in over a century. He's publicly called for the resignation of a sitting British Prime Minister. Keir Starmer, the man who stood in front of Parliament just months ago promising stability and cooperation, now finds himself at the centre of a diplomatic firestorm that threatens to redefine the special relationship forever. What Trump revealed in his statement isn't just political theatre. It's a calculated strike that exposes secrets both governments desperately wanted to keep buried. And the evidence he's presenting, it's devastating enough to bring down an entire administration. This isn't about policy disagreements or political posturing anymore. This is about alleged interference, hidden operations, and betrayals that cut to the very heart of democratic sovereignty. The clock is ticking. The pressure is mounting, and the world is watching as two of the most powerful nations on earth stand on the precipice of an unprecedented rupture. What you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about international politics and the hidden forces shaping our world. The statement dropped at exactly 3:17 a.m. London time, deliberately timed to catch the British government completely off guard. Trump's words were not the usual diplomatic language wrapped in courteous ambiguity. They were direct, brutal, and left absolutely no room for misinterpretation. Prime Minister Starmer must resign immediately, the statement began, and from there it only escalated. Trump didn't just call for resignation, he provided specific allegations that paint a picture of systematic interference in American democratic processes, coordinated efforts to undermine his administration, and what he describes as a betrayal of the trust between allied nations. The document, running to several pages of detailed accusations, reads like something from a political thriller, except this is happening in real time with real consequences that will reshape global politics for decades to come. The allegations centre on something Trump calls Operation Westbridge, a previously unknown initiative that allegedly involved senior members of the British Labour Party working directly with Democratic operatives during the recent election cycle. According to Trump's statement, evidence obtained through intelligence sources shows that Starmer's team didn't just offer advice or moral support, they actively participated in strategy sessions, provided funding through circuitous channels, and even sent operatives to swing states under the guise of independent observers. The statement includes references to specific meetings, dates, and individuals involved, creating a paper trail that the British government is now scrambling to either verify or debunk. Trump claims to have communications, financial records, and testimony from individuals who participated in these operations, and he's threatening to release everything if Starmer doesn't step down within 48 hours. But the interference allegations are just the beginning. Trump's statement goes further, accusing Starmer of coordinating with intelligence agencies to gather damaging information on American political figures, using British diplomatic channels to funnel information to American media outlets, and deliberately undermining American foreign policy objectives in Europe and the Middle East. The president describes a pattern of behaviour that he characterises as nothing short of a covert operation designed to destabilise American democracy from within. He points to specific news stories that broke during critical moments of the campaign, tracing their origins back to British sources, and argues that the timing and coordination were too perfect to be coincidental. This isn't just about election interference anymore. Trump is painting a picture of a comprehensive campaign by a foreign government to manipulate American domestic politics. The British response has been chaos, barely contained beneath a veneer of official calm. Downing Street initially released a terse statement calling Trump's allegations baseless and irresponsible, but the cracks in that unified front appeared almost immediately. Senior Labour MPs, who were initially expected to rally around Starmer, have instead maintained a conspicuous silence, while opposition parties are demanding emergency parliamentary sessions and full investigations. The Conservative Party, still reeling from their election defeat, has seized on this moment with barely concealed glee, with former ministers calling for Starmer to appear before Parliament and answer questions under oath. Even more telling are the voices within Labour itself. Backbenchers who already had concerns about Starmer's leadership are now openly questioning whether he can survive this scandal, regardless of whether Trump's allegations prove true or false. The international implications are staggering and still unfolding in real time. NATO headquarters in Brussels has called emergency consultations as member states try to navigate the fallout from this unprecedented public feud between two founding members of the alliance. The European Union, never comfortable with Britain since Brexit, is watching with a mixture of concern and barely disguised satisfaction as London's special relationship with Washington appears to disintegrate before their eyes. In Moscow and Beijing, the reaction is predictable. State media is amplifying every detail of the conflict, presenting it as evidence of Western hypocrisy and the collapse of the liberal democratic order. American allies in Asia are frantically reaching out to Washington, trying to understand what this means for their own relationships, while adversaries are already calculating how to exploit the fractures now visible in what was once considered an unbreakable bond. The evidence Trump claims to possess is the critical unknown factor that has everyone from intelligence analysts to political operatives working around the clock. If he's bluffing, if these allegations are fabricated or exaggerated, then this becomes a story about presidential overreach and the dangers of conducting foreign policy through inflammatory statements. But if even a fraction of what Trump alleges is true, if he can produce documentation showing coordination between British political operatives and American campaigns, then Starmer's position becomes untenable. Not just politically, but potentially legally. British electoral law is strict about foreign interference, and if it can be proven that resources, personnel, or strategic support were provided to foreign political campaigns, the consequences could extend beyond Starmer to encompass much of the Labour Party leadership. The 48-hour deadline Trump imposed isn't just dramatic theatre, it's a calculated move to force Starmer into a corner where he either resigns under pressure or waits for evidence to be released that could be even more damaging. The historical context makes this moment even more significant. The special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom has been a cornerstone of Western geopolitics since World War II. Surviving disagreements over Suez, Vietnam, Iraq, and countless other policy disputes. American presidents and British prime ministers have maintained a tradition of public unity, even when private tensions ran high, understanding that the appearance of solidarity served both nations' strategic interests. What Trump has done shatters that tradition completely. Not since the War of 1812 has an American leader so publicly and aggressively challenged British governance, and never in the modern era has a president demanded the resignation of a sitting British Prime Minister. The precedent being set here is dangerous not just for US-UK relations, but for the entire framework of diplomatic protocol that governs how allied nations interact with each other. Behind the scenes, frantic diplomatic efforts are underway to contain the damage and find some path toward resolution. The American State Department, caught completely off guard by Trump's statement, is reportedly working through back channels to communicate with their British counterparts and establish some framework for dialogue. But these efforts are complicated by the fact that Trump issued his statement without consulting his own diplomatic corps, leaving career Foreign Service officers to clean up a mess they had no part in creating. The British ambassador to Washington has requested urgent meetings with senior administration officials, only to be told that the president's position is non-negotiable and that all communication should go through channels that report directly to Trump himself. This circumvention of normal diplomatic procedure is itself a signal. Trump isn't interested in quiet resolution or face-saving compromises. He wants public accountability, and he wants it on his timeline. The domestic political calculations on both sides of the Atlantic are incredibly complex. For Trump, this aggressive stance plays directly to his base, who have long been suspicious of foreign interference and who appreciate his willingness to confront traditional allies when he believes American interests are at stake. It reinforces his image as someone who puts America first, regardless of diplomatic niceties or historical relationships. But it also carries risks. If the evidence fails to materialise or proves less damning than promised, it becomes a credibility issue that opposition figures will exploit relentlessly. For Starmer, the calculation is even more perilous. If he resigns, he validates Trump's accusations and potentially destroys his political career along with Labour's credibility. If he refuses and the evidence proves substantive, he faces not just political ruin, but potential legal consequences that could extend to criminal charges related to electoral interference and violation of international agreements governing state conduct. Intelligence communities on both sides are now operating in overdrive, trying to verify claims, protect sources, and manage the fallout from what appears to be a significant breach in the usual protocols governing how intelligence is shared and used. American intelligence agencies are reportedly furious that information they may have provided to the president through normal channels is now being weaponised in such a public and politically charged manner. British intelligence services are conducting their own urgent review, trying to determine if there were indeed operations that could be characterised as Trump alleges, and if so, who authorised them and what the paper trail looks like. There's also the question of how Trump obtained his information. Did it come through normal intelligence channels, from friendly foreign services looking to cause trouble, or from private sources that may have their own agendas? Each possibility carries different implications for both the veracity of the claims and the motivations behind their public release. The media landscape has become completely saturated with analysis, speculation, and breaking developments that seem to emerge hourly. American cable news networks are running continuous coverage with panels of former diplomats, intelligence officials, and political analysts trying to unpack the implications. British media is split along predictable political lines. Outlets sympathetic to Labour are questioning Trump's motives and the reliability of his evidence, while conservative-leaning publications are demanding answers and accountability from Starmer. International media is framing this as a potential turning point in the post-war international order, with some commentators suggesting that the special relationship may never recover, regardless of how this immediate crisis resolves. Social media has become a battlefield where partisans on both sides are sharing selectively edited clips, unverified documents, and conspiracy theories that range from plausible to completely absurd. The economic implications are beginning to manifest as markets process the political uncertainty. The British pound has fallen sharply against the dollar as currency traders factor in political instability and potential damage to UK-US trade relations. London's financial markets are experiencing unusual volatility as investors try to price in scenarios ranging from Starmer's resignation to a complete breakdown in diplomatic relations. American markets have been more stable but are showing signs of nervousness, particularly in sectors that depend heavily on transatlantic trade and cooperation. Business leaders on both sides are privately expressing alarm, with some already calling for emergency meetings with government officials to discuss contingency plans. The potential for trade disruptions, regulatory complications, and investment uncertainty is substantial enough that economic advisors are urging both governments to find resolution quickly before market jitters turn into something more serious that could affect ordinary citizens through job losses and economic contraction. Legal experts are beginning to weigh in on the potential ramifications, and their assessments paint a complicated picture that extends far beyond immediate political consequences. If Trump's allegations of coordinated interference prove accurate, multiple international agreements governing state conduct could have been violated, potentially triggering mechanisms within treaties that govern intelligence sharing, electoral integrity, and diplomatic immunity. British legal scholars are pointing out that UK law specifically prohibits foreign interference in other nations' democratic processes, creating the possibility that individuals involved could face prosecution under British law, even if they were acting with some form of official sanction. American legal experts are discussing whether foreign coordination with domestic campaigns violates federal election law and whether individuals who participated could be subject to charges under statutes governing foreign agent registration and election integrity. the international legal framework, largely untested in scenarios involving close allies engaging in this type of alleged behaviour, may be about to face scrutiny that could reshape how democratic nations interact during each other's electoral processes. The timing of Trump's statement is itself a subject of intense speculation and analysis. Why now, months after the election concluded and with his administration already well established? Some analysts suggest this is retribution for specific British policy positions that have opposed American initiatives, pointing to recent disagreements over trade negotiations, climate policy and approaches to China. Others see it as a calculated move to weaken European unity more broadly, sending a message to all European leaders that opposition to American policy preferences will carry personal political costs. There's also speculation that this is preparation for upcoming negotiations where Trump wants Britain isolated and weakened, unable to leverage the special relationship as diplomatic capital. The most cynical interpretations suggest this is primarily about domestic American politics, using foreign policy drama to distract from other issues or to demonstrate strength and decisiveness to voters. Each theory has adherents and each is supported by different pieces of circumstantial evidence, but the true motivation may involve multiple overlapping factors that serve Trump's immediate and long-term objectives. Within the British Labour Party, the recriminations and finger-pointing have already begun, even as public solidarity is officially maintained. Reports are emerging of emergency meetings where senior party officials are debating whether Starmer has become a liability that threatens not just his own position, but the entire Labour project. Some members are reportedly arguing that resignation would allow the party to distance itself from whatever emerges, while claiming Starmer acted without broader party knowledge or approval. Others insist that resignation would be capitulation to foreign pressure and an admission of guilt that would poison Labour's brand for years to come. The internal party dynamics are being complicated by long-standing factional divisions that predate this crisis, with different wings of the party seeing this moment as either an opportunity to reshape leadership or a threat that requires unified defence despite personal reservations about Starmer's judgment. The broader implications for democratic governance and international relations are profound and still coming into focus. If a president can successfully demand the resignation of an allied nation's leader through public pressure and threatened evidence release, it fundamentally alters the balance of power in international affairs. Smaller nations allied with the United States are taking note, understanding that their own leaders could potentially face similar treatment if they run afoul of American preferences. The message being sent is that traditional diplomatic norms and mutual respect among allies are no longer necessarily operative, replaced by a more transactional and potentially coercive approach to international relationships. This could accelerate existing trends toward multipolarity, with nations seeking to diversify their alliances and reduce dependence on any single relationship that could be weaponized against them. As the deadline Trump imposed approaches, the pressure on all parties involved intensifies exponentially. Starmer faces a choice between resignation that might preserve some dignity but destroys his political career, or defiance that risks even more damaging revelations and potential legal consequences. Trump faces his own pressures. He must either produce evidence substantial enough to justify his unprecedented demands, or face accusations of reckless overreach that damages American credibility. The British government must decide whether to circle wagons around Starmer or begin preparing for transition to new leadership. NATO must navigate maintaining alliance cohesion while two of its most important members engage in public conflict. The entire international system is watching to see whether this crisis marks a temporary aberration that can be resolved through quiet diplomacy, or whether it represents a fundamental shift in how powerful nations interact with each other in an era where traditional norms seem increasingly disposable. The next hours and days will be absolutely critical in determining not just the fate of Keir Starmer's premiership, but potentially the future of the transatlantic alliance and the broader architecture of Western cooperation that has defined the post-war era. Every statement released, every piece of evidence presented or withheld, every diplomatic manoeuvre attempted will carry enormous weight in shaping outcomes that will reverberate for years or even decades. This is history being written in real time, a crisis that combines elements of political scandal, international intrigue, and institutional stress testing on a scale rarely seen in democratic societies. Whatever emerges from this crucible will reshape assumptions about power, alliance, and the limits of acceptable conduct in international affairs. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see which way this falls and what rises from the wreckage of certainties that no longer seem quite so certain anymore.